Everybody, how you doing today? I've got a special presentation ready for you today, and the title of this episode is going to be called Barry Goldwater and the Blue Room. And as most of you know, Barry Goldwater was a senator from Arizona. He was a 1964 presidential candidate, and we're going to consider in this presentation a number of letters that Barry Goldwater wrote to UFO researchers, answering a couple of questions. There's some very interesting statements, and I'm going to provide you the references, the original letters, and this will be kind of a lengthy presentation here. There will be a lot of reading, so you can sit back, you can pause this presentation, you can read these documents for yourself. So let's go ahead and begin here. And I want to give you the references of where I'm getting this information. So this comes from the Barry Goldwater papers at the Special Collections Division of Arizona State University and the Antonio Huneeus collection. So that's where this information came from. And we'll go ahead and start right away here. Letter dated March 28th, 1975, Mr. Arnon here. Dear Mr. Arnon, this is from Barry Goldwater. The subject of UFOs is one that has interested me for some long time. About 10 or 12 years ago, I made an effort to find out what was in the building at Wright Patterson Air Force Base, where the information is stored that has been collected by the Air Force, and I was understandably denied this request. It is still classified above top secret. Isn't that interesting? I have, however, heard that there is a plan underway to release some, if not all, of this material in the near future. I'm just as anxious to see this material as you are, and I hope we will not have to wait too much longer. Well, this letter was dated 1975, and here we are in 2022, and we're still waiting, right? We're still waiting for this information to come out. Is there a plan? Has there been this slow drip plan to release this information to the public? Let's continue on, and we'll see if we can answer a couple of questions here. Now, here's another letter dated April 11th, 1979. And I had to remove the name and address contact information from this letter. I do know who this person is. So let's go ahead and begin here. It is true, I was denied access to a facility at Wright Patterson because I never got in. I can't tell you what was inside. We both know about the rumors. Apart from that, let me make my position clear. I do not believe that we are the only planet and of some 2 billion that exists that has life on it. I have never seen what I would call a UFO, but I have intelligent friends who have, so I can sort of argue either way. Sincerely, Barry Goldwater. And we'll move on to the next one here. Now, this is interesting. Most of you know within this field that there was a very interesting exchange between Barry Goldwater and General Curtis LeMay. And we'll just go for word here. Now, this is Barry Goldwater. Quote, I asked General Curtis LeMay, who for years was head of Strategic Air Command, for permission to check into the files. And he told me, quote, hell no, and don't ask me again. Isn't that interesting? Other reports indicate that General LeMay basically said, don't you ever ask me that question again, Barry, because I can't even get in there. So what would be so secret that even General Curtis LeMay couldn't get in there? And let's ask another question here. If UFOs are nothing more than weather balloons, swamp gas, and misidentifications of the planet Venus, why was Senator Barry Goldwater denied access to the files and evidence stored within the Blue Room? I mean, it's a logical question. If there's nothing to UFOs, then there shouldn't be anything to hide, right? That makes sense. Now let's go to another one here. This kind of goes what we just talked about here. Barry Goldwater, Republican from Arizona. Quote, Air Force, Navy, and commercial pilots have revealed to me cases where a UFO would fly near them, right off their plane's wing, and then zoom away at incredible speeds. I asked General Curtis LeMay, who for years was head of the Strategic Air Command, for permission to check into the files, and he told me, quote, hell no, and don't ask me again. I think some highly secret government UFO investigations are going on that we don't know about, and perhaps never will until the Air Force discloses them. I cannot believe that in this never-ending universe, our planet is the only one with intelligent life. I certainly believe in aliens in space. They may not look or talk like us, but I have very strong feelings they have advanced past our mental capabilities. And we'll continue on here. What could the United States government be hiding inside the top secret blue room? Now, that's a logical question. What could they have in here? Let's see. What could they have? Could it possibly be the extraterrestrial craft, debris, and bodies from multiple UFO crash retrievals, including Cape Girardeau, Roswell, Aztec, and Kingman? What else could they have in there? Let's see. What else could we possibly find in there? What about the bodies, the extraterrestrial bodies that we've heard about for decades, right? We've heard these reports that these bodies are kept in cold storage in a top secret location below multiple facilities within the government. Wright Patterson Air Force Base, Eglin Air Force Base, MacDill Air Force Base, Norton Air Force Base. And we're talking about the glass jars, the liquid nitrogen cooling tanks with the pipes going to them. So if you want to know where the bodies are at these locations, just find the liquid nitrogen cooling tanks with the pipes, and that's where you're going to find your bodies. That's for sure. Okay, let's move on. And then we've heard about these glass jars with alien beings inside. Cape Girardeau, there were allegedly 3 glass jars with 3 extraterrestrial bodies inside. That was reported. That was allegedly seen underground the Capitol building at Washington, D.C. So this is perhaps what it would look like inside the secretive blue room. And we'll continue on with our presentation here. So another letter dated October 19th, 1981. Barry Goldwater. First, let me tell you that I have long ago given up acquiring access to the so-called blue room at Wright Patterson, as I have had one long string of denials from chief after chief. So I have given up. In answer to your questions, one is essentially correct. I don't know of anyone who has access to the blue room, nor am I aware of its contents, and I am not aware of anything having been relocated. Isn't that interesting? I can't answer your question 6. In fact, I can't find anyone who would answer it. To tell you the truth, this thing has gotten so highly classified, even though I will admit there is a lot of it that has been released, it is just impossible to get anything on it. I'm returning your papers because I know they are of value to you. So isn't this interesting? This thing has gotten so highly classified. If there's nothing to UFOs, then why is it so secretive? It is just impossible to get anything on it. Wow, I mean, impossible to get something on a weather balloon? That's interesting. Must be something going on here beneath the surface that we don't know about. So could this be what they're talking about? The dish-shaped craft from multiple retrievers. Are they storing this at the facility at the Blue Room? Do they have an even larger facility? And have they been moved from place to place to keep these dish-shaped craft under wraps? That's the question we want to look at here. Next one, December 3rd, 1974. This is to Mr. Leonard Stringfield, who we all know was the leader on UFO crash retrievals. Dear Mr. Stringfield, let's get this whole UFO thing straight as far as my relationship to it is concerned. Many years ago, more than I can remember, someone asked me if I believed in UFOs. I said that I neither believed in them nor disbelieved in them, because I felt that with the billions of planets in our own universe, there had to be at least one other of which live creatures that could accomplish things with their brains or whatever used as brains. I have never seen a UFO. I've never had a personal friend that's seen them, although I've read accounts of reputable pilots who have seen what they described as UFOs. That was about the extent of my statement on UFOs. But since then, and that was a long time ago, I made an effort to get in the room at Wright Patterson Field where the information was stored, and I was denied this request, understandably. Frankly, I'm no expert on this subject. I've never made any lengthy statements on it. What I've told you just about sums it up. Sincerely, Barry Goldwater. So this is back in 1974. It's a long time ago. We really do need to make some progress. So again, are they involved in a reverse engineering program? Who is heading up the program? Who might be just under the leaders of this program? We're going to look at that as well. I'm going to try to give you some answers that we've been thinking about all these years, and let's explore that. So now that leads us to this book called UFO Crash at Aztec, by William Steinman, written a long time ago, and there were some interesting data points within there. And I kind of want to take you through this case using visual aids here, and we'll begin with this letter to Senator Barry Goldwater. And this is basically August 4th, 1982. And this is Steinman to Senator Barry Goldwater. And we'll just go ahead and read this here. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is William S. Steinman. I am a freelance investigator into the subject matter pertaining to ufology, physical evidence. At the present time, I am and have been investigating into the crash recovered saucer cases in general and the Aztec, New Mexico case in particular. At the present time, I have accumulated the following facts substantiated the actuality of the incident. Number one, I have located, visited, and verified the actual crash recovery site 12 miles northeast of Aztec, New Mexico. Number two, I have located and interviewed the 1948 owner of the ranch, and we'll move on, upon which this saucer was recovered. I have located and interviewed another ranch owner who witnessed the saucer coming down across his own ranch on its way to the crash recovery site. Interesting. Number four, I have located and interviewed a retired military intelligence officer who is a member of the recovery team. Number five, I have located and in process of setting up an interview with a well-known scientist who is at the scene of the recovery. Number six, I have a copy of a declassified Air Force Office of Special Investigations document, which positively references the Aztec saucer. Seven, I am in the process of following up on many, many more leads pertaining to this case, both directly and indirectly. Mr. Goldwater, I understand that you are and have been interested in the UFO phenomenon, especially that phase dealing with recovered flying saucers allegedly being held in the so-called Blue Room, here it is again, of the Foreign Technology Division of Wright Patterson Air Force Base. Can you please substantiate this and also answer the following questions to the best of your ability and or knowledge? Number one, have you ever gained access to the room that allegedly houses UFO artifacts? Number two, if so, what is actually in that room? Number three, who controls the flow of need to know personal in and out of this room, and upon which is this need to know based? Four, is there a flying saucer program involving the duplication of these recovered craft now going on within the boundaries of our country? That's a nice question, right? Number five, if so, how far along is this program? And why is it so super secret? Please get in touch with me as soon as you possibly can concerning the above mentioned subject matter. Very sincerely yours, William Steinman. Good questions we should all ponder. Very good questions. So let's get into this Aztec incident here. Recovery at Hart Canyon. Scott and Suzanne Ramsey have done a tremendous amount of research on this case. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. They've got over 25 years of research into this. In fact, even Stanton Friedman said that more research and effort had gone into the Aztec incident case than had ever gone into Roswell. Even Stanton Friedman admitted that. So let's begin the process of going through this case scene by scene. I want to take you to the map here. If you look just below the north, south, west, and east aerial, you'll see the town of Aztec. And if we continue up on this road, you'll get to Hart Canyon Road. Hopefully you can follow along with me here. And if you start going eastbound on Hart Canyon Road, boom, this location right here, 12 miles approximately down Hart Canyon Road, that's the area that we're going to be looking into. And I want to take you scene by scene through this case here, and we'll follow along as we proceed here. So here is the craft itself. Aztec, New Mexico UFO, Hart Canyon, March 25th, 1948. Now the craft was 99.9 feet in diameter. It had approximately 6 circular portholes wrapped around the outer circumference of the upper dome. There was a smaller dome located in the bottom side, again, 99.9 feet in diameter, just shy of 100 feet in diameter. Now, what I'm going to add to this drawing which Scott Ramsey recently revealed to me, is that right along the outer rim of this craft, like right in this area, right in here, there were 3 golden rings. I will add that to this drawing, but 3 golden rings right near the rim of this craft. And that was confirmed by 2 separate independent witnesses who didn't know each other. And they mentioned the same 3 golden rings on the craft itself. So let's go ahead and continue here. Now, this is one of these cases where the civilians got to the craft before the military did. Here you see the oil field workers who got to the scene first, and they crawled up on the rim of the disc. They're walking toward the upper dome. They're looking inside these windows. And what did they find? Let's continue on here. What did they find? They in one of these porthole windows, they found this small hole that was about the size of a quarter, just slightly larger than a quarter. And one of these oil field workers went back. He got out one of the poles from his truck, walked back, climbed up on the rim of the disc, and walked to one of these windows. And he poked that pole through that hole, started jiggling it around. And for some reason, he was successful enough to activate some type of a device that opened up an entry hatchway door on the bottom dome of the craft itself. So now I want to take you inside. And what did they find when they went inside the craft? What did they find? Well, let's see here. They found 2 extraterrestrial beings slumped over, one kind of forward onto a control console, the other one slumped over on a chair. They were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall. They had a one-piece tight-fitting blue flight suit on, slightly larger heads, larger eyes, minute nose, slit for a mouth that we've all heard, kind of a burned brownish skin. Now, they had what looked like laptop configurations on this console, but they weren't laptops. And there was some type of purple iconology or hieroglyphic lettering projected on the inside wall of the upper dome. So this is what they found on the upper dome. Now, when they walked through the outer rim of the craft, it was compartmentalized. And what did they find there? Let's move forward here. They found 14 additional bodies for a grand total of 16 bodies. Here you see the retrieval operation. This is done by my good friend Tom Bogan. There was a member of the clergy there, and you can see they're laying the bodies out, 16 in total. And if you look here as kind of a reflective image of a helicopter, there was an actual helicopter back in 1948 when this took place that did an orbit around this entire scene and then departed. And the oil field workers stated that they didn't know what was stranger. Was it the helicopter or this strange 99.9 foot diameter dish-shaped craft? Because the helicopter at that time was still an oddity. So this is kind of scene 2. Now I want to take you to scene 3 here, and we'll continue moving on. So how do you move a 99.9 foot diameter dish-shaped craft across the desert, right? Well, when the military got onto the scene, they started bringing all the civilians away, and they're taking command of the whole operation now. And they figured out that the entire craft is put together and fastened by a very specific pin device. And when you deactivate that pin device, this entire craft breaks apart into 3 equal pie segments. At that point, they strung cables across the desert, wrapped them around these pie segments, started dragging them across the ground, put them up on M25 tank transporters, and then ship them out. So let's move to the next scene now, and we'll kind of get an idea of what that looked like. So here we are during the retrieval operation. They're now moving these segments away in these M25 tank transporters. And where are they going with this? They are going, ladies and gentlemen, to Los Alamos, where it was reassembled for the beginning of the reverse engineering program. And that's via Scott Ramsey and Suzanne Ramsey. So here is the response letter from Barry Goldwater to William Steinman. This is June 20th, 1983. Dear Mr. Steinman, to answer your questions, I have never gained access to the so-called Blue Room at Wright Patterson, so I have no idea what is in it. I have no idea who controls the flow of need to know, because frankly, I was told in such emphatic way that it was none of my business and that I've never tried to make it my business since. I wish you luck on your investigation. I am one of those people who believe that with some 2 billion planets scattered around our universe, there has to be a couple of more that can support life on it. Sincerely, Barry Goldwater. Isn't this interesting? Because just a few weeks ago now, the James Webb Space Telescope just discovered a galaxy that's 150 times larger than the Milky Way galaxy. Wow, that's big. I mean, something's got to be out there, right? Something's got to be there. All right, next one. Another letter by William Steinman to Barry Goldwater, dated July 23rd, 1984. Dear Mr. Goldwater, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is William Steinman. I am that freelance investigator into those cases involving the United States military recovery of crashed and or disabled flying saucers and the occupants thereof between the years 1947 through 1953 time period. I wrote to you on 6/14/1983 and received a response from you on 6/30/1983 concerning your attempt to view these alleged artifacts at Wright Patterson Air Force Base and your emphatic denial to view such artifacts by General Curtis E. LeMay. And we'll move on to page 2 here. You stated that I had since made it none of my business to ask again because of the emphatic denial to gain access to the room where the alleged artifacts are stored. You also stated that you don't know who controls the need to know flow of information in and out of that room. Barry, I recently obtained the name of whom one person considers the person who did and or still might be in charge of the flying saucer program, meaning the recovered nuts and bolts and the attempted duplication thereof. The name given to me by the widow of the scientist who was in charge of the duplication program at Wright Air Development Center, 1950 to 1956, and the later moved to Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico, 1956 to 1960, is Dr. Henry Kissinger. That name pops up a lot everywhere. This means he might still and or at one time did control the flow of need to know information in and out of the flying saucer program and its subsequent duplication program. Likewise, the alleged Blue Room, and we'll move on here. I wrote 2 letters to Dr. Kissinger in relation to the before mentioned subject matter. So far, no response from either letter 5/184 or 6/11/84. Dr. Kissinger was a captain in Army counterintelligence from 1946 until 1959 reserve. While attending and later teaching at Harvard University, he was on mobilization assignment at headquarters of the Army Counterintelligence Corps. It was the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit of the scientific and technical branch of the Army Counterintelligence that recovered the flying saucers. This unit operated from the Durango and Denver, Colorado area between 1948 and 1958. Can you perform a little investigation of your own into this very critical area pertaining to crash and recovered flying saucers? If you find anything out, please let me know. I believe that this subject matter is very critical and should not be kept hidden away under many, many layers of fabricated so-called security wraps. Very interesting, very interesting. The public should be made aware of these flying saucers. Please get in touch with me as soon as you possibly can. Very sincerely yours, William Steinman. Good letter, a lot of good questions, a lot of good material there. So here's the response, August 20th, 1984. Mr. William Steinman, dear Mr. Steinman, the subject you and I wrote about several years ago is still just as closed and tight as it was then. No one seems to know of Dr. Kissinger or the one you referring to, and no one will even discuss the possibilities of my or anyone else having access to the material there. I'm told that at the proper time, it will be released, but there is not enough conclusive evidence for anyone to think that something startling is going to come out. I'm sorry to give you this information. I don't like it any better than you. Best wishes, Barry Goldwater. So this is 1984. We're still waiting after all this time for this information to come out. Do they have the bodies? Do they have the craft? Do they have the debris? Do they have the motion picture film reels, the 8x10 black and white glossies? Where is this information and evidence being kept? Because it's time that this information be declassified, put within the scientific community, and then we can move together as a united coalition of everyone on this planet. So here's the next thing here. I'm putting this in red because I think it's really important. Stop. We need to change our entire outlook on the UFO crash retrieval secrecy architecture. It's the way I worded this here. The United States Air Force is not, repeat, not in charge of managing the overall UFO reverse engineering program. It's the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, in conjunction with the United States Navy. Those are the organizations that are pulling the strings. So for all these years, so many people within ufology over the last 7 decades, we've all been, hounding on the Air Force to tell us the truth about UFOs and crash. No, it's the Atomic Energy Commission. They're the ones involved in the reverse engineering program. So let's go to Los Alamos. And let's see if we can find some more information here. So this is Los Alamos National Laboratory, and we'll move on here. Who would be in charge, right? If this is 1948 timeframe for Aztec, who would have been involved? Well, it would have been Robert Oppenheimer, theoretical physicist. He would have been involved. And then, of course, Dr. Edward Teller, physicist, he would have been involved. Now, these two did not get along because Dr. Edward Teller was always interested in building the next bigger bomb, but that's not how Robert Oppenheimer operated. He was more of a peaceful type approach. So these two people didn't get along too great, but these would have been the men that would have been involved for sure. Now, we have some very good information from Scott Ramsey indicating that the Aztec saucer, sometime after 1948, the Aztec saucer was moved to Building 828 at Wright Patterson Air Force Base and reassembled there in an initial continuing reverse engineering program took place at that location. So who would have been in charge there after the time frame it left Los Alamos? Well, it would have been Alexander Lippisch, German aeronautical engineer who was brought to America through Operation Paperclip. Is there anybody else that would have been involved? Well, Richard Feynman would have been involved. This is according to Scott Ramsey, brilliant physicist, Richard Feynman. He was involved as well. This is again, according to Scott Ramsey. And that brings us to this gentleman, Dr. Robert Sarbacher, who we've heard about before, brilliant physicist. So how do we tie all this together? What kind of documented evidence do we have linking this retrieval operation, the reverse engineering program, Los Alamos, and Robert Oppenheimer? Do we have any evidence or documents that can tie all this together so we can make a link to this? Well, we actually do, and that's in this document right here. This is November 29th, 1983, answer from Dr. Robert Sarbacher to William Steinman, again, November 29th, 1983. Dear Mr. Steinman, and this is Robert Sarbacher talking here, I am sorry I have taken so long in answering your letters. However, I have moved my office and have had to make a number of extended trips. To answer your last question in your letter of October 14th, 1983, there is no particular reason I feel I shouldn't or couldn't answer any or all of your questions. I am delighted to answer all of them to the best of my ability. You listed some of your questions in your letter of September 12th. I will attempt to answer them as you had listed them. Number one, relating to my own experience regarding recovered flying saucers, I had no association with any of the people involved in the recovery and have no knowledge regarding the dates of the recoveries. If I had, I would send it to you. Number two, regarding verification that persons you list were involved, I can only say this, and here's the key. Here's the key. John Neumann was definitely involved. Dr. Vannevar Bush was definitely involved. And I think Dr. Robert Oppenheimer also. So there's our link. Coming from a reputable source, Robert Oppenheimer was involved in the retrieval operation, the reverse engineering operation. Now, my association with the Research and Development Board under Dr. Compton during the Eisenhower administration was rather limited, so that although I've been invited to participate in several discussions associated within the reported recoveries, I could not personally attend the meetings. I am sure that they would have asked Dr. Von Braun and others that you listed were probably asked and may or may not have attended. This is all I know for sure. So isn't this interesting here? He's talking about several discussions associated with reported recovery. So discussions were made. There was involvement. So we have a link here. We have some documented evidence that ties this in with Los Alamos, Dr. Robert Oppenheimer. So what's the bottom line? Now I hope people understand why I call this the Blue Room Media, why my YouTube channel is called the Blue Room Media. It's a reference to the Blue Room at Wright Patterson Air Force Base, where the evidence is kept that can move all of us forward. And that's really what we're looking for. So I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you for subscribing. Certainly want to keep the subscription going. We're growing in number, and I'm going to continue getting this information out. I'm going to be continuing going to the university archives, going to the special collections and bringing this information out. And I definitely want to thank you for your assistance and your help. Thank you very much.